Welcome to the Operate Intelligently podcast, a podcast for all things operations. Hello, listeners. We've got Taylor Furst here with us from The Dude. Hey, Taylor, how are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So, Taylor, before we get started, a little bit of who you are, what you do here, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes.
I'm an implementation specialist here at Dude Solutions. I work exclusively with the Works Hub. Works Hub is kind of what I do. I love it. I love the client base that I work with. I work with senior living communities almost exclusively. The odd church or membership organization here and there. And I've implemented a hospital or two in my day, but senior living organizations are kind of where I spend my time and who I work with the majority of the time.
Cool. And you've been here for a couple of years, so you've had...
Yeah, been here for 2 years. Worked through a lot of clients, built a lot of really great relationships.
So you probably have hundreds under your belt that you've talked to, worked with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Been on site, got a little bit of experience. So that's great. I'm glad you could come here and talk to me a little bit about, and our listeners, about the senior living report that we just did, that we just got the results on, where we had roughly 350 or so respondents that were directors, VPs, C-level professionals, specifically in senior living.
Yeah, it's really great, and it's kind of indicative of the fact that we're an industry leader in senior living. It's somewhere where we have a lot of market penetration, so getting that much feedback really provides solid data for us.
Yeah, and a little more about what the operations report is. What does it contain? What is it? What do we come away with?
Yeah, so it's really just kind of getting into information, some struggles, some successes, things that are going on in the market today, what people are seeing as market trends, and things that are coming down the pipe as things that need to be overcome.
Yeah, and we've got an aging country, right? There's a lot of folks that are going into senior living centers. There's more showing up around the country. We've got them. I see them popping up all over the place.
Absolutely. It's the largest generation in history is about to retire.
Yeah.
And to kind of cope with that, a lot of senior living communities are building like crazy. They're and as they're doing that, they're dealing with not unique struggles. Yeah. Dealing with things that are kind of in line with a lot of maintenance operations in the country.
And forgive me for some ignorance on this. It's a competitive market. It's not like they're all state run. They're individually owned, or there's a group that owns them.
Absolutely. There are privately funded organizations. There are publicly funded organizations. But there are a lot out there. There's a lot of choice, and actually choice is one of the biggest issues that these communities are dealing with at this point, because you're dealing with a generation that the older generations, the greatest generation, they were more receptive to, let me just do what's told to me. My kids want to send me here, I'm going to go here. And now this generation of seniors is about to retire that's used to making their own decisions. They want the gym and Wi-Fi and the pool, and they want these amenities, and they can choose, okay, that one has what I want, that one doesn't. That one might be a little bit more expensive, but I've worked more than any other generation in history, so I can afford it.
Right. So they're going around, they're shopping around for the best one. I've seen one. We just had one in our town that got built, and I mean the amenities, and a lot of the folks are in their late 70s, early 80s. The amenities and just the opulence of it when you walk in, it's almost overwhelming.
It really is. It's crazy, but that kind of illustrate. Well, there's that end of senior living, but there's this other end of senior living that's not talked about as much. Like you see these palaces built, these palatial rolling hills, and beautiful places that look like resorts. But then there's this other thing that's called the middle market that's not being addressed. That is kind of falling through the cracks. It's the people who, don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into their retirement, as a buy-in, like a country club, and don't have $7,000 a month to spend.
Or it's an established, space that's been around for 20 or 30 years. That may or may not have had those resources to keep up with the changing or the evolution and growth of the market.
Exactly. So those are definitely challenges being faced by the industry moving forward, is addressing the people who don't have $500,000 stowed away for the next step in their lives.
Right. So, let's talk about this report. Were there any surprising statistics that kind of stuck out for you that you were like, wow, I didn't know that, or an aha, like that makes a lot of sense? Or
There are a couple big ones. The first big one is the 42% of organizations don't have a succession plan. What's that? Moving to the next step, moving to the next order of leadership. Mm-hmm. The next team that's going to come through. And I tell my clients all the time that using the work sub, using preventative maintenance, using templates, these are all knowledge retention tools. And when you're building the system, you're not building it for the team you have today.
Right.
You're building it for the team you're going to have 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. Because the maintenance industry, not only are our clients getting older, mm-hmm. but our client, the end users, are getting older.
Our facilities folks.
Exactly. Maintenance, the average age of so many of these communities for the maintenance staff is creeping up to the residents. Mm-hmm. So you get these groups of 60, 65-year-olds who've been doing the job for 25 years.
Right.
And so that guy who's doing the job is the only guy who's ever looked at that boiler. Mm-hmm. And he knows every shimmy and every loose nut. He knows exactly what's done on a daily basis. So when he leaves, he takes all that knowledge with him.
Right.
And we want to get every scrap of that knowledge into the system to make sure that the next guy can step in and know what to do.
So I've been in this industry for forever, over 20 years. And 20 years ago, those 60, 65-year-olds creeping up, getting ready to retire, I used to say, what do you want to leave for a legacy? And back then there was a lot of like, I don't know, where do I leave it? What do I do? Just from your own personal, experiences with talking to people, maybe from the report or maybe from your personal experience, are you seeing some of those older employees and facility directors being more embraced to, hey, I want to leave something, I want to leave a legacy, I just might not know where it is, or where do I look, or how do I find it? Yeah,
and that's the great thing about the industry that I work in. I'm sure a lot of other industries are a bit the same, but you don't work at a senior living community for 25 years and not enjoy the fact that you work at a senior living community. Mm-hmm. It's a great group of folks. They care about the residents that they serve, mm-hmm. and they all just want to leave it and make sure that it keeps running at the standard at which they want it to run.
Yeah. And from the report and from your experience, did you see a lot with, that's just a staggering percentage, 42% don't have a succession plan.
Yeah.
We always want to have a succession. We always want to know, if this, then what. Do you see that they're overwhelmed with that? When I hear 42% don't have a succession plan, I go, wow, that's pretty overwhelming that half of the folks that responded to this have no idea what's going to happen next when somebody leaves, when I get hit by a bus, something mm-hmm. goes on. When you're dealing with these new experiences and setting people up and doing implementation, do you feel that tenseness, or do they just embrace it, they soak it right in, and they just like say, hey, Taylor, take me on this ride and make it magical?
Yeah, not right away.
Yeah.
There's usually an aha moment though,
mm-hmm.
as we move through training, because that's what I do. I manage the training process of my clients.
Right.
So I get them up to speed and hopefully have a long-term adoption, building these long-term relationships through, the multiple applications that we serve in the Works Hub. But it's usually not right away.
So being scared is okay.
Yeah, it's that first few weeks is drinking from a fire hose. It's learning the system. Coming from half the time it's coming from spreadsheets and post-it notes, mm-hmm. running their maintenance system, and they're learning this new thing. They're getting their mobile phones out. They're getting engaged in the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. And then when we start working on their scheduled work orders, their PMs, having that knowledge retention conversation, getting their assets into the system, starting to think about future values, replacement costs, mm-hmm. The idea that the Works Hub can help you track things 10, 15, 20 years out, mm-hmm. so that the $150,000 boiler that you need to replace in 15 years, that doesn't creep up on you. Mm-hmm. That's not a surprise you want to get, that we're outside the service life of this piece of equipment. We need to replace it next year.
Right.
That's all of a sudden that's 2 employees that you were planning on hiring next year that you don't get to hire because you need to put all that money into your boiler.
Yeah. Are you looking for a way to get inspired about your work as a facility or operations professional? Join us at our annual Maintenance and Operations Conference, Dude University in Raleigh, North Carolina, May 3rd through the 6th, 2020. You'll be able to attend educational sessions about your day-to-day work, meet professionals from across the country that work in your and other industries, and enjoy food, friends, and fun in the Dude's hometown. Learn more and register at university.dudesolutions.com. So let's do this. It is roughly half of the people that responded, so probably half or close to it out there that didn't respond. Facilities, they're looking at this, right? They're looking at a whiteboard that's got nothing on it. What advice or steps would you suggest to those 42%? And then after, let's talk about people that are getting started. What they should have a good idea of. Hey, we've got nothing. We've got a clean slate. We have no idea where we're going. What should they be looking at first? What should they be considering? Or what should they be taking from this report as, like, hey, this makes a whole lot of sense of where I should start and how I should get to start going?
Yeah. Write down your process. So much of what we deal with in healthcare, there's a lot of regulation. Whether it's on the hospital side, you're dealing with national regulation. On the senior living side, there are a number of different entities that get involved in regulation, but the regulations tend to refer back to the processes that you have written down. So go look at your processes, because you have to have them written. That's just part of doing business in this industry. Go look at your processes, and then go look at what you're doing. Are you serving your processes? Are you meeting your service promise to your residents, your staff? And if not, then you need to start looking into the way you do your job. I talked to I have to give her a shout out, Amy Brom. She's one of our absolute rock stars on the Works Hub. She gave me this quote, and it was, I'm not going to get it verbatim, but saying, maintenance technicians are professionals, and they need the right tools. And I'm not just talking about hammers and nails and screwdrivers and wrenches. I'm talking about they need a tablet, and they need the Works Hub, and they need it in their pocket so that they can do the right job wherever they are on campus. They don't need to carry on a stack of work orders that might be 3 days out of date. They need the Works Hub. They need constant updates.
So one of the things, I'm going to drive into your story,
Sure,
if you don't mind. The importance of surveying your clients or customers, and what happens a lot of times is when you don't have anything, when you don't have a succession plan, that's the big fear.
Yep.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know how bad we're doing. I don't want to know how bad people are looking at me. So I think one of the best first things you can do in any organization is survey your clients, and that gives you a starting point. You had an experience. Was it based on a survey, right?
Yeah, it was based on a survey. The client I just started talking to today said that the reason that they started using the Works Hub, the reason they purchased the Works Hub, was due to the results of a resident survey saying that too many things were falling through the cracks, too much was moving too slowly, and there was no transparency back to the residents. And that they were doing everything on paper. They were not responding. They were, their techs were turning in their work orders maybe once a week, so there was no, real-time update, and realizing that the Works Hub was a solution that solved those needs and kind of closes the loop and allows residents to see what's going on. You get a real-time accounting of, when things are completed. Right.
You might not know. You might think you're doing a good job, but without that data, without that spreadsheet of information, without a report like this to see what other people are doing. This is another piece. And Grace, we can give this report to people if they want it, right? So we've got a 36-page that's got the respondents, the 350 or so respondents, information, quotes, statistics. If you want it, we'll put a link on the podcast episode. Hopefully it's a good resource for you to start to evaluate your next steps, which that brings us to the next step. You got somebody that says, hey, all right, I've done my survey, I've found my processes, they're in this notepad, they're here, they're everywhere, I want to aggregate, put it all together in one place. Where do you, that's a lot of stuff. Do you have like a, so for me, my specialty's always been in education, so it's a learning experience having you here, which I'm really appreciative of. For me, I would always say like life safety, that's an important one. Your HVAC, that's a high ticket item. the air conditioning and heat always goes in the coldest and hottest day of the year, and the most important people, the people paying the bills, are the ones that are in it when it breaks. Is that the same thing in senior living? Or
absolutely. And there's actually another really fun stat that from a capital planning standpoint, which is another tool we have in the Work Sub, there are 24% don't have capital planning out beyond 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And think about that fact that, sure, there are some things that you're going to have that are inside that 5-year range, but, so many of your pieces of equipment, your HVAC, your air handling units, things like that, are going to have a 15, 20-year lifespan. So all of a sudden, something that costs over $100,000 isn't on the roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
You're not budgeting for if you're not budgeting for that more than 5 years out,
right?
It's not going to be impactful.
Yeah.
Trying to save for something that big, that's got its own budget line item.
Yeah.
Parking lots, roofs, those things that are essential to, your client's health and happiness. If you crack parking lot, sure, it might not look great. All of a sudden, your resident trips on it.
Right.
They're older folks that's a serious issue.
Right. Yeah, and that's and there's a quote. Andy Kraft, he says, "We check our plan annually, but it's a 20-year plan. To properly plan for capital needs, you really need that. A 5-year plan just doesn't provide the future vision you need. For example, if a boiler that has a 20-year useful life, but I don't even address it until year 15, 5 years out, I'll never have enough to replace it in time." We call that. I used to call that the threat radar. What's on my threat radar, and some of these high-ticket items. I mean, you're going to have stuff that breaks that's unforeseen, no matter how detailed, no matter how much stuff you have. But if you can get 80 to 90% understanding that's pushing out more than 5 years of expectation and understanding,
yep.
You're doing all right? And that comes into PM, the importance of doing PM. So I'm jumping the gun on this one. I'm sorry, but I was
going to take that term precisely, and that's the with any system, but with our systems in particular, the data you pull out of the system is only as good as the data you put in,
mm-hmm.
and making sure that you have the right asset data is essential, and then making sure you have the right PM data.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to look at a piece of equipment that's $50,000, $100,000, and you're doing quarterly PMs on it, and at the end of that year you're able to pull accurate data that tells you how many work orders, not just your planned work, your quarterlies,
mm-hmm.
but you're able to pull that reactive work as well, because you're tying that asset back to all of your reactive work, and you see that you're doing 15 reactive work orders between every quarterly PM. Mm-hmm. And you're scheduled to replace that in 3 years, but you can't afford to replace that in 3 years. You need to squeeze another 2 to 5 years out of it.
Right.
Maybe you bump that PM schedule back to monthly. You're getting more regular touches on it to reduce the number of reactive touches on it,
mm-hmm.
and hopefully extend the life of it.
Yeah.
So that's knowledge is power when it comes to that.
Yeah. And that's one of the big pieces to our software that I always say, because I wasn't a wrench turner. I worked for a property management company that was basically delegated a lot of the work. I cleaned the toilets and vacuumed the floors. It's what the extent of my experience. But the question wasn't typically whether or not work was getting done. It was capturing that work and being able to say that it's getting done. So one of the big things is that asset data that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How do you suggest people that look at this report and see some of these numbers where it doesn't seem like they have a lot going on, which they probably do? What do you suggest to them about getting that asset data? What are the ways to do it? How should they do it? What's the kind of the best way for different types of folks that someone that's got the money, someone that doesn't have the money?
Yeah, the best way at the end of the day is using our professional services to get that data in the system. As I said, the data that you're able to pull out is only as good as the data you put in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use our professional services, we know that that's going to be the right data. You're going to have the right information. It's going to be clean. It's not going to make your eyes cross trying to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the budget this year, work with an implementer, work with our team. Make sure you get consistent data. clear, concise, and consistent. That's my tagline when I talk about data. Make sure that you're getting proper naming conventions. You're getting things in the right way. You're managing your data. You're retiring the stuff that you're not using anymore. You're putting the new data in, and you're attaching those assets to work orders on a regular basis.
So, a couple of last pieces here. One of the things I'm curious, just retention. You think that doing all this stuff, if you start to implement, if you take this report and you go, hey, I got to get a plan together, I got to improve my plan. Do you see, and do you experience, or do you talk to clients that say, you know what, my retention is up, or I've got people that are sticking around, that they're happier in their work environment? Are you seeing that? Because I saw a couple of things that would indicate to me that's a better work environment is a better chance of someone sticking around.
That's definitely it. I mean, I talk to younger guys, and even guys that aren't younger, who are averse to technology, and you get that by and you say, trust me, use it for a month. Guys who say, I don't like technology, I don't like Big Brother knowing how much time I'm spending or how many work orders I'm doing. But after a month, you get them saying, wow, I feel empowered, because I know the boss knows exactly how many work orders I'm doing and exactly how much time I'm spending doing it.
Yeah.
So kind of empowering the staff, and then you get that clean data, and if everyone starts tracking every work order they do, then maybe next year we're able to hire a specialist. We're able to hire someone on staff to reduce the amount of work that everyone's doing, because we've actually shown how much work we do. Yeah.
Well, before we get you back out on the floor and taking care of our incredible clients, you see any other trends with the future operations? You see anything that's exciting, or anything that came in this report that you go, yeah, this is kind of the future, or this is what we're seeing people start to do more of?
Technology is exciting. I mean, that's the future of the industry. I mean, you think about the fact, yes, we're talking about senior living, and people don't usually think about technology associated with that, but the most technologically, not just the largest, but the most technologically savvy and needy generation. These are, it's not my generation that grew up with a smartphone, but it's people who have over the last 10 years developed a dependence on smartphones, who carry around, iPhone 12s or whatever we're on these days. And they want to be able to, we have Alexas being standard in senior living residences.
Right.
So it's being able to cope with the new wave.
Yeah, no, I think I think you hit spot on. I was actually going to do a post today on LinkedIn that was going to be a joke from something that I saw. I'm thinking about trading my iPhone 11X in for a flip phone, and because it was only 15 years ago we were using something called Nextel with Direct Connect for communication.
I miss my construction
phone. Didn't have any of this stuff, right? So I think you're spot on. I think the technology is going to get exciting. It's only going to get smarter, more intuitive. It's only going to help us with a challenge. And why I brought that retention is that we're in a very challenging time. Skilled labor is hard to find. So the most important thing is to retain the skilled labor that you have for as long as you can.
Well, and to tie back kind of everything that we just talked about, you've got an aging workforce who's getting closer to their golfing and fishing days.
Yeah.
And you've got this younger workforce. Those kids aren't going to want to walk around with a stack of work orders on a clipboard. You get to hand them a smartphone and say, track your work orders on here. That's more engaging to them. It's something easier to swallow. Throw it in your pocket, instead of 200 work orders.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to let you get back to your day job, but I really appreciate you giving a little bit of time here, giving some insight, sharing some of the stats on the report, and appreciate everything that you do for our clients day in and day out, which is the most important thing, with the excitement that you have to share here, knowing those stats, those numbers, those percentages. Thanks a lot for that. That'll do it for this episode. We're going to have the link to Taylor's most recent blog. We'll have the show notes, as well as the ability for you to download and click on a link for the report that we have here on senior living, in case you want to give it a look. That'll do it. Thanks, Taylor. Have a great day.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Operate Intelligently podcast, produced by Dude Solutions. You can reach us by emailing dspodcast@dudesolutions.com or check us out on the web at dudesolutions.com.